Hey everyone, welcome back to the Let's Talk Teaching podcast. As always, I'm your host, Kayla Durkin, and we are on week 2 of our math series that we are working through. Today I have Jamie Miller, and she is sharing all about Math Workshop. Again, this is focused on math, but of course, there are going to be things that I know you could apply to other content areas if you are using small groups in your classroom. Jamie's going to be talking about a student reflection piece. It's at the end. I do not want you to miss it, so be sure you check that out. And then she also has a really cool freebie for you that I know you're going to want to grab as well. Again, as always, if you're enjoying this podcast, please go down below, leave us a review, give us a shout out on social media. You truly have no idea how much that means to us. So with that, let's get into it and let's meet Jamie. Hey, Jamie, how are you?
Good. How are you, Kayla?
Good, thank you. Why don't you just take some time and tell us a little bit about you?
All right, awesome. So I am Jamie Miller from at Jamie Miller Math on social media. I teach 7th grade math, so Math 7, pre-algebra and algebra. I have been teaching middle school math for the past 12 years, 10 of which were actually in 6th grade. I am really passionate about using the Math Workshop model, guided math, and the CRA technique to individualize instruction and to reach all of my learners. And then in my free time, I create resources for other teachers to help them save time and make their math classrooms fun.
That's amazing. So, first of all, I don't think I knew you were teaching for 12 years. You look so young. You look like you've maybe been teaching for 5. So, that's
I will
that's
take the compliment. Thank you.
yeah. And so for teachers who are listening, can you tell us what CRA stands for?
So CRA is a technique. It is moving students from concrete to representational to abstract. So a fluid process of just helping students to better learn and understand math concepts.
Very cool. So today we're talking a little bit about Math Workshop. I mean, you have so many things we could dive into, but let's start with Math Workshop. So tell us a little bit about it.
So, Math Workshop is a framework that allows students to move through stations, learning new content, practicing skills and strategies, and reflecting on their learning. Math Workshop is differentiated for all learners, and the predictable structure is what allows students to be so successful with it.
Very cool. So why did you start using Math Workshop, or why should other teachers use it?
That is a great question. When I taught 6th grade math, again for 10 years, my classes were not leveled. So I would have students with IEPs, GIEPs, 504s, everyone in the same classroom. And throughout the years of trying different strategies and methods, I never felt like I was truly meeting the needs of all of my learners until I discovered Math Workshop. It was a game changer for my classroom. And I finally felt like I had time to meet students on their level, to enrich them, to challenge them, to provide support at their level and with engaging activities.
Very cool. So how does this work? How do you structure this in your classroom?
So, Math Workshop is essentially broken into 4 different components. The first is a mini lesson. So, that is where you are introducing something new to the whole group. Students are participating in the mini lesson where new, typically math content is being introduced. Research shows it shouldn't be longer than like 10 to 15 minutes. So the biggest thing to remember here is you're providing a brief overview to students. It's okay if they don't grasp the concept because you're going to be working with them during the guided math station, which is another component. So it doesn't have to be an extensive mini lesson, just engaging students and trying to build those connections.
Okay. And so what happens next?
The next component would be the guided math group. And this is your small group where you have students working with the teacher to address specific needs. So this is the time to dive deeper into your focus lesson. You can go over examples. You can practice using strategies. This is a great time to use manipulatives, especially if you don't have a whole class set. You can take student questions, check in with the individual students, but the best part I think is just seeing what students know and being able to try to take them to the next level.
Yeah. And so when you are diving into these small groups, where are you getting your resource? How do you know what to use? Where are you getting your data from?
So, our students take a benchmark at the beginning of the year, and it covers all of the different strands for seventh grade math. So, I use that data to initially group them, and then I'll use data from just mini check ins, tickets, tests, formal, informal assessments to help me determine my groups a little bit better that way. So I will typically find resources on Teachers Pay Teachers, whether they are free, whether I am paying for them. Oftentimes it's resources that I am creating for my own classroom, utilizing boom cards, pixel activities, creating guided math resources, and then also utilizing what the textbook curriculum offers. So I'm not completely reinventing the wheel every single time for every single lesson.
Very cool. Okay. So I know people will be wondering, we can just say this now. So I'm assuming you're putting these resources on Teachers Pay Teachers. So if they are teaching sixth or seventh grade, can they come find some of these in your shop?
Absolutely. You can find me at Jamie Miller Math on Teachers Pay Teachers.
Perfect. Okay. So next up then is learning stations, right?
Yes. So the third component here, while you are working with a guided group, your students are expected to be working at learning stations. So this is either going to be independent or it's going to be collaborative, meaning students are working in pairs or in groups, and they're practicing either current or past topics. The biggest thing about learning stations is they need to be completed independent of support because you are running that guided teacher station. So they can't interrupt you. They have to be able to complete the learning stations by themselves. So we want to think about creating learning stations that are engaging, they are accessible, they're enriching student learning, and we want to make sure that they are strategic. So students are able to practice and to learn from one another.
Very cool. Okay. So I know I'm going to put you on the spot with this, but this is something we didn't plan on talking about. But with all of this math workshop, there is a huge level of procedures and expectations that have to be put into place first. So, for teachers who want to get started with this, how did you start laying out those expectations for your students?
So I talk about this a little bit in my Math Workshop Academy course that I created, but one of the biggest things I tell everyone is you shouldn't start Math Workshop until you already have good classroom management, you already have good classroom procedures and expectations in place, because students need to know, like, where are they going to find materials? What do they do when they need help? You need to have that groundwork laid before you can then translate it into Math Workshop. So when I start Math Workshop, it's just kind of like a translation of everything we've already been doing. But I do display a fun little Bitmoji slide with my expectations. And basically, it's laying the groundwork for, what's this look like? What does this sound like? And the emphasis with my Bitmojis is you can't interrupt me unless. And then I put fun Bitmojis like you brought me coffee, you brought me puppies and kittens, there's a true emergency. And we discuss. I have actually had a student bring me candy before, chocolate, to interrupt me.
A little bribery, right?
I took the chocolate and then I sent them back to work.
That's awesome. So, with all of this, there needs to be a foundation of relationships in your classroom as well. So, how do you build relationships with your students while all of this is going on?
That is a great question. So there are so many different ways to build relationships with students. I think that when your students feel like they have a relationship with you, they feel valued and they're going to try a little bit harder. So one of the first things I do is I always try and stand at my door and greet every single student by name. And I know this is hard, especially with transition times and trying to clean up and get ready for your next class, but it's huge. Another thing that I like to do, and I don't know where this idea originated, but I love using an attendance question. So shout out to at Smart Pug Teaching. I download all of her free slides every month. She already has attendance questions in there, and my kids just love answering them. It's a great way to also spark side conversations, and not only for me to get to know my students, but for them to get to know one another. So I think that would be one of my biggest tips, using an attendance question. And it gets to the point where students want to create their own attendance questions.
Oh, that's so cool. Okay, so for everyone listening who wants to find those again, can you just say one more time where you find yours?
At Smart Pug Teaching, you can find her on Teachers Pay Teachers or on social media, and they are free every single month. So don't hesitate, run and download them every month.
That is so cool. I love that. So, any other classroom management strategies that you want to share with all of this?
So I recently started something called Miller Wars, and it's working out pretty well. We focus on one area that needs improvement. And ever since coming back from winter break, entering the classroom, they have been a little bit rowdy and not necessarily doing what they need to be doing. So that's what we've been working on the past 2 weeks. We had a discussion of what it looks like and sounds like when you enter the classroom. I put that up on chart paper. So classes, to see how long it takes them to come in quietly, take the most direct route to their seat, to get started on their bell ringer, to then be working on whatever else is next up on the board. So it's really competitive. The kids love it. And then the winner at the end of each week, we actually take the average of their times. So more math related, love it. And whoever has the lowest average that week, they get to vote on a little class reward.
That sounds so fun. I love that. And so, do you have that shared on your Instagram or anything where teachers can find that and read a little bit more about that?
I do. I have a post on my Instagram and on my Facebook that talks a little bit more about it. And the kids are eating it up, even seventh graders. So elementary ideas still work for middle schoolers.
Very cool. That's so fun. Okay, so before we go today, Jamie, do you have any final thoughts you want to leave anyone with if they are interested in trying Math Workshop with their students?
I do. So I think the biggest thing to remember is using Math Workshop. It's going to be a little bit of work at the beginning. It definitely takes time for students to get the hang of it, for you to get into a good rhythm, but it is so worth it. Because when we use Math Workshop, we are helping our students to become better problem solvers, to become better critical thinkers, and ideally to become future leaders. So I think Math Workshop is definitely a game changer and would encourage everyone to use it.
Awesome. I love that. Okay, so I do actually have two more questions for you. You know, I serve first year teachers. So, do you have any tips for new teachers who are just getting into the teaching world?
I think the best tip that I have ever received, and I did post about this on social media the other day because it was on my mind. The best tip is what works in someone else's classroom may not work in your classroom.
Mhm.
Especially with social media, you see all of the highlights and all of the ideas, strategies, and I know it can be overwhelming. And sometimes you pick a strategy or an idea, try it in your classroom. And I don't know about you, but I felt like a bad teacher when it didn't work. So just want to remind you that what works with one class does not work with another. And there are so many factors that go into play with that. But I think realizing that it's okay, that's half the battle. So
That's so good and so true. We sometimes, with the whole world of social media, there is a big comparison game. And I think it's important to know that every single teacher's classroom is so very different. And so, of course, what works in someone else's might not work with yours. You're serving a completely different set of kids. So, thank you for sharing that tip. And is there anything else you want to share with everyone who's listening?
I would actually love to encourage teachers to reach out if you have any questions about Math Workshop or guided math. And in addition to that, I actually created a course called Math Workshop Academy where I guide teachers through the steps of implementing provide them with resources that they can use immediately in their classrooms, as well as a private Facebook community. So, as teachers, we can support one another through the implementation process, talk about our struggles, but also our successes, and work through them together while we do math workshop in our classrooms.
That's so good. So if they are interested in checking this out, where can they find this information?
They can private message me at Jamie Miller Math on social media. And then I also included a freebie. I don't know how you
Yeah.
plan on sharing that with your audience, but it is also included on the last page of that free product.
Yeah. So I guess they don't know about this yet. So tell us about the freebie that you included.
So the freebie just talks a little bit about Math Workshop, reviews the definition with you, why to use it, and then it talks about the 4 different components of Math Workshop, while also providing you with an organizer just to help gather some of your thoughts, your ideas of how can you structure your focus mini lesson, what might your guided math and your learning stations look like, and what might the reflection piece look like.
That's perfect. So I don't even know if we talked about the reflection piece with students sharing about their learning. Let's touch on that just quick.
Okay, awesome. I was thinking the same thing that we might have missed it. So, this is an important step, and we don't want to miss this step, unlike we almost did here. This is where students are sharing their learning. It could be something that they learned at the guided math station. It could be something that they learned at a learning station, but it's a deliberate time for students to make connections, to demonstrate their learning. And then this can help you when you are creating your future groups for the next time you do math workshop.
So good, so good. So if you are interested in checking out this freebie that really kind of hits on all of the points that Jamie talked about today, you can grab it at ndteaching.com/Jamie. It will be an automatic download there for you. So be sure you grab that. And then of course, Jamie, just one more time, where can they find you? Where can they reach out to you?
So you can reach out to me at Jamie Miller Math on social media. I would love to connect with you, collaborate with you, and help you out.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you so much for being here today, Jamie.
Oh, thank you for having me, Kayla.
Absolutely. Quick before you go, I just wanted to say that I truly hope you're enjoying this math series. Next week, we are going to have Mona from Hello Mona Math on the podcast, and she's going to be sharing about creating a math community in your classroom. Many, many, many of the things that she talks about, I've already done the interview, so I can already say this. Many of the things that she talks about truly does apply to all content areas, all subjects, all grades, you name it. It is just so good. We're talking about establishing norms. We're talking about behaviors and routines. There's just so much goodness in this next episode, and I don't want you to miss it. So stay tuned. It'll be posted next week. And in the meantime, again, as always, leave a review, give us a shout out, come on over to Instagram and say, hey, you can find me at North Dakota Teaching. If you have any questions at all, we can always chat. I am here to support you however I can. All right, I'll see you next week.